Hello everyone, welcome back. It's Empyrion Galactic Survival episode 59. I'm Enigmius and today we're continuing with the Seraph hover vessel build. We've made quite a bit of progress since the last episode, not as much as I might have thought that we would make, but I'm happy with what has happened since the last episode, so it's not a complaint that we're making when we say it's not as far along as I expected, it's just where it is. Now this build, in case you missed the last episode, is all about the details and messing around with various different things that we can use to add details to the exterior of the ship, not necessarily functional, but changing the way it looks. There is a little bit of extra armor value to be had in adding sort of cosmetic details to the outside, because even if it's not intended specifically to be there for the armor, it still adds a little bit. So recognizing that minor bonus to the armor value is there, we also have to be realistic and say that's not why we did it. So the last episode, we had this front section done right here with this sort of vent kind of thing. And then we had basically just a very narrow sort of spine connecting it to the rear section, where again we had some vent sort of things going on and a variety of different things. And that was it. You couldn't see the back of the ship like this because it was standing on the back of the ship. One of the little glitches and hang-ups that we had as we were just starting to build it. It sort of flipped around in the hangar and was standing on its ass end. We got it to flop over onto its feet, so to speak, which is quite good because it gives us a much different perspective on how it's going to look, and it made it a lot easier to continue with the building with it sitting down like this, so that we can make some decisions based on how it actually sits on the ground. One of the things that I wanted to talk about a little bit today is the whole sculpting side of things, because this is where we can spend hours on a design like this and not necessarily have anything to show for it that would suggest that we spent hours on it, except to say we spent hours. For example, if you look at this transition here from where the back end ended in the last episode to where this central portion exists, this spot right in here looked absolutely awful and very, very different when I first kind of roughed it in, got all the blocks in place and looked at it and said, that's kind of the general idea of what we want. And then it took 5 more passes of sometimes minor, sometimes major adjustments to get it to this point here where you can see it's still got some angular stuff going on. We've still got this sort of angular bit in here, and we've got this angular bit right here. But I'm actually okay with those bits. I don't mind having them there. They draw a little bit at the eye, but not so much that you look at it and say, that's pretty garish, that's pretty ugly, I don't want to look at that anymore. And then it kind of carries forward these straight lines and comes around to the vents on this front section here, the largest vents that we've made so far. And it's something that I'm happy with because when I look at it, it's just got certain lines to it that I appreciate. Some things that if I could come together with a better idea, I probably would. But overall, for the amount of time that I spent on it, it was time that I enjoyed. It's time that I think was well invested. And it's brought us to this point. We've got some of these little ridge bits here. These are the wall blocks that I've been using, same as the ones that I've been using to make the vents, and we've got some more right here. And these are just cosmetic. They don't do anything. Again, one of those situations where they do add a tiny little bit of armor value, but not enough to justify saying that they create a defensive benefit. But they are attached to areas where it was just a little bit too flat. Like you can see this area in here, without those little ridges, would just be absolutely flat. This area down here was absolutely flat. This area right here might be a candidate for some of these ridges, depending on how it goes. But I decided to leave it for now because it does already have quite a bit going on in the front end. The very front of the ship, pretty plain. I've been thinking about certain things that we might be able to do, again, specifically and strictly for the purpose of making it look a little bit different. Not worried too much about the function at this point in time. And then back here, I've spent a lot of time sort of sculpting this back end, starting with this vent here and kind of getting the angles for that thing worked out so that I was happy with that. And then working around these vents here, setting ourselves up so that we've got some room to add a couple of turrets, probably missile turrets in the back end for this guy here. And then once we got the thing flopped down, we could see the back end and start working on that. We've got some thrusters in here, which are going to be obviously very important with the way the hover vessel rules are. Used to be that the hover engines would sort of keep your ship level regardless of the altitude that you're at, so having extra thrust in the back wasn't necessarily going to be helpful. In this case, the hover engines are supposed to keep the ship flat relative to the terrain that it's on, so having plenty of forward thrust should make the ship a little bit more capable of going up and over hills and ridges and things like that. So we want to make sure we have plenty of thrust on the back of the ship, and we're going to be adding more before we're done. But this is a good start. And then again, kind of working on the sculpting in the back end here and making things look as interesting as possible without being ugly. And I think we're doing all right in that regard. We've got this sort of overhang here coming off the back, and at first I wasn't too sure about it. I was kind of like, it could look either really neat or it could just look lazy, one of the two. Right now I'm feeling like it's looking pretty neat, so we're going to leave it, and if it changes to lazy a little bit later on, then we can start making some adjustments. But for now, I'm pretty good with the way it's looking. The one area that I can show you that not only I'm not happy with, but definitely is early in the sculpting process, is this chunk right here. Basically from these blocks here all the way down to the hover engines are going to be very, very different when the final version is in, just because we've got a lot of lines, and to be quite honest, these blocks here and these blocks here, there was never going to be a situation where I was going to consider that a final design anyways. I had just gone through the process of sculpting this lower section and brought it around like this, and this is what I came up with in the early pass for this row, and it changed the way this set of blocks lined up with this here. So these were going to be changing pretty dramatically no matter what. But looking at what we've got over here, I really like this. It looks bulky and solid and sort of like one piece. It doesn't look like things that were attached to the underside of the ship with all the things attached to the thing. Definitely working away from that, and that's going to take a little while, because what I don't want to do is put myself in a position where these things start to move in towards the middle too far and end up not really giving you that look of stability. It kind of looks like it could tip over at any time. That's what I want to avoid. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our time, we're going to sculpt these out properly so that they look the way I want them to look, but also behave the way I need them to behave. And then we can do a final functional pass, because there's always that element. If I spend too much time thinking about the function as I'm working on the form, I don't get either done. I'm not able to address either because, one conflicts with the other. If I worry about getting the form in first, then I can come back and take a look at the function and say, okay, well, in this case I need room for a turret. What can I change in order to give myself that room? Or I need more armor in this midsection. That's definitely one of the things that we're going to need. So you say, okay, what are we going to need in order to get more armor into that midsection? And just to show you here, try and get the drone in here. There we go. Very, very easy. We just have to add layers of blocks in here, and we can add basically as much armor as we want. We have actually no functional reason to go to the front of the ship. There's nothing up there where there's no containers, there's no machines. It's just basically all just cosmetic blocks up front that are providing a way to make the ship look a certain way and attach the forward hover engines to. So we can completely block this off if we wanted to and just have one massive cluster of blocks for armor in the front and middle sections, and that would be very, very easy to do. I'm not sure that I want to do that though, because I would suspect that that would add significantly to how much thrust we need in order to make this thing work. So we do have that option very, very easily, at least, to shore up the midsection with a couple of extra layers of hardened steel blocks so that we've got that little bit of extra armor. And you have to shoot through more than one or two layers of blocks to be able to get to our cockpit or the core that's sitting directly underneath. And that's just kind of the functional consideration that we have when we're looking at this thing, saying, okay, we've taken care of the way it looks. Now what do we need to do in order to take care of the function? And that's one of the things that we can do as an example. And then we're going to have like I say, probably 2 missile turrets up here, a couple of minigun turrets on the sides. We aren't going to be able to put them on the vents because the way these things line up, it would make it look like the turret was floating 3/4 of a block worth off the surface of the ship. It's not that big of a deal. It's just something that I was thinking after the fact. We can have minigun turrets on these flat strips down either side, and then of course the artillery turret right here where it's in a good forward location so that we can worry about if we missed any turrets with our bomber on the points of interest that we visit. It'll be pretty easy to strip them off with the artillery turret. And then that'll be the ship. We're going to do a pass of texture and paint once it's all done. The white is good to kind of see how things look in a certain way. If we were to change this all to a darker color, that would be good for seeing things in a different sort of light. I guess, I mean, there's no real other way to put it. Just the way the angles come together and everything sort of looks and fits. The one issue that I have right now is that it doesn't shine anywhere. Anywhere we've got this white, it's a very matte sort of white. That's what we get when we use the primer sort of texture and then just put a single color on top. It doesn't have any shine whatsoever. So I want to change that up. I want to get some different textures in here that will allow us to have that shiny kind of metallic sports car look to things. And then the color, I'm tempted to keep it white, but whenever we start changing the texture away from this matte sort of look, it also ends up being a light gray instead of a white. So we're just going to kind of play it by ear and see what we end up with. It could be a completely different color. It could work well with the white based on the texture that we choose. We'll find out soon enough. So there's going to be more detail done by the next episode, hopefully looking in the 95% done category. And then what we'll do is we'll put the turrets on, even if we still have a little bit of detailing left to do on the hull. And we'll take it out for a rip and we'll shoot at some things and we'll see how it's going to perform. And then once it's all tweaked and done and all the details are in the way that I want them to be in, then we can offer it up as a blueprint and let you guys mess around with it and do whatever it is you do with blueprints. So if you want to be notified about the next episode, the easiest way to do that is to subscribe to my channel or follow me on social media. Links for social media are always in the information section below the video. Feel free to leave your comments and feedback. Thanks for watching, guys, and take care.